Public hearing to consider extension of interim urgency ordinance enacted pursuant to Government Code Section 65858, establishing emergency regulations related to urban lot splits and housing units built in accordance with Senate Bill 9, declaring the urgency thereof and making determination of exemption pursuant to Government Code Section 65852.21J and California Environmental Quality Act Guidelines Section 15061B3. May we have a staff report, please? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Matt Peters with the Planning Department. And this agenda item is the extension of the SB9 urgency ordinance. I've broken the presentation down into two main sections. The first answering the question, what is SB9? And then the second portion will be discussing the city's authority for the interim urgency ordinance. I want to begin by stating that the urgency ordinance is not a moratorium. Applicants can still apply for an SB9 urban lot split, but need to follow the interim urgency ordinance standards that are in place until we have a final ordinance that's adopted. So SB9 is referred to as the HOME Act, the Housing Opportunity and More Efficiency Act. It allows urban lot splits and two-unit projects by right in single-family residential zones. So local agencies, cities, must ministerially approve both lot splits and up to 4 units in single-family zones. And ministerially means that the city has no discretion to deny a project if it meets all SB9 requirements. There can be no hearings, no public input, and no CEQA. And the new lot resulting from the urban lot split can be sold separately. So just to illustrate SB9 for the city and for the residents, here's an air photo of a single-family home. The lot line is the black line. The landowner would be able to do an urban lot split, so they can split the lot in half, and then they can build an accessory dwelling unit in addition to the primary dwelling unit that already exists on the first lot, and then the second lot that's created, they can build a duplex for a total of 4 units. And that's SB9 in a nutshell. The max number of units is capped at 4. So as I described, you can have the primary structure and an ADU on one lot, and then you can have a duplex on the other, or any combination thereof. You can have a primary dwelling unit, an accessory dwelling unit, a junior accessory dwelling unit, which is attached to the primary structure, or a duplex. In terms of location, the parcel lot or development must be located in a single-family residential zone, but it cannot be located in a special flood hazard area, high fire severity zone, earthquake fault zone, a historic property, or a historic district. So it sounds like a lot of restrictions, but just to illustrate, here's an outline of the city of Temecula. The gray areas represent something other than single-family zoning, so commercial, the business park, the mall, Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve. Everything in yellow represents single-family zoning. And a lot of that is mostly developed and would be eligible for an SB9 urban lot split. So under SB9, local agencies may only impose objective design standards. So the next couple slides, I'm just further explaining what's identified in the law. So local agencies may only impose objective design standards. We did adopt those, so the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council back in December of 21, and the City Council adopted those for multifamily developments, including duplexes. City may require only 1 off-street parking space per unit, none if the development is within a half mile of a high-quality transit stop or car share vehicle location within 1 block of the project. Setbacks are limited to 4 feet on side and rear yards, and there are no setbacks at all on an existing structure, one constructed in the same location. No right-of-way dedications or construction of off-site improvements may be required. No corrections of non-conforming uses or structures are allowed. and the owner must sign an affidavit that they will occupy one of the units as their principal residence for 3 years. And then finally, no short-term rentals for less than 30 days. Also, some considerations for the HOAs, homeowners associations, which we have several throughout the city. SB9 contains no language limiting the scope of CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. So homeowners associations may enforce CC&Rs to prohibit or regulate duplexes and urban lot splits. This creates a potentially confusing scenario for landowners. So state law permits SB9 urban lot splits. The city must allow them as required by state law, but then an HOA has the potential to deny. So with all of that, to answer the question why the urgency ordinance, first reason is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the quality of life of Temecula's residents. Staff needs more time to study and analyze the impacts to the city and its neighborhoods, specifically impacts to sewer, water, electricity, trash, traffic, schools, police and fire staffing. And we are monitoring a number of neighboring cities' ordinances, and we need time to develop the final regulations. In addition, the City of Temecula is a member of WRCOG, or the Western Riverside Council of Governments. WRCOG did hire a consultant to put together a toolkit for local cities. So that toolkit includes a fact sheet, scenarios, and then a model ordinance. And as I circled here on the screen in red, we received that draft in December. We're going through it, we're digesting it, and seeing how it fits with our urgency ordinance. So with that, the state law allows a city to adopt an interim ordinance that imposes temporary restrictions on the approval of land use entitlements that may be in conflict with the general plan or zoning and need to be studied. It's definitely the case with SB9. California Government Code Section 65858, and this is specific to the timing. So the interim urgency ordinance, which has already been adopted, goes into effect for 45 days, but then we're allowed 2 extensions. The first extension is for 10 months, 15 days, which gets you the first year. Second extension is for 12 months. So essentially you get 2 years on an interim urgency ordinance. And that ordinance must be adopted by a 4/5 majority vote. Some important dates. On February 22nd, 2022, the City Council adopted the SB9 urgency ordinance. That was ordinance number 2022-03. That was set to expire after 45 days on April 8th, 2022. Staff came back on March 22nd, 2022, and the City Council extended the ordinance 10 months and 15 days. And that ordinance is set to expire February 21st, 2023. That's why we're back. We're proposing to extend for another period up to 12 months to February 21st, 2024. So staff's recommendation, the project is exempt. The urgency ordinance is exempt from CEQA, Section 15061B3. Just a reminder that the extension must be adopted by a 4/5 majority vote. And staff recommends the City Council adopt an extension to the interim urgency ordinance for SB9 urban lot splits, ordinance number 2022-03, to and through February 21st, 2024. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you for the presentation, Matt. Any questions of staff? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Stewart.
Okay, Matt, the setbacks, you were saying it's 4 feet. Is that sides and back?
Sides and rear yard.
Okay, and so, and it could be a 0 against another building that exists today, correct?
Yeah, if there was an existing home,
Right?
the setbacks could follow essentially the footprint of the house.
Right, okay. Is that very comparable to our existing ADU law? So say it's not going to be a setback, I mean a lot split. Are those setbacks the same as it would be for, would an ADU be the same for a lot split?
They're different under SB9.
Okay.
And an ADU has a setback. I'd have to take a look at exactly what it is.
Okay.
It is probably pretty close to the 4 feet for side and rear
Okay.
lot lines.
Right.
But SB9 is specific to being able to follow the footprint of the structure.
Okay.
So that's different from our existing ADU law.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Alexander? Okay, we'll maybe hold the comments then. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing and see if we have any public comments.
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have 3 public comments, 2 in person and 1 via email. The first speaker is Laura Lamont, to be followed by Bob Cal, and this is a public hearing, so the speakers do receive 5 minutes each.
Okay, welcome.
Hi, housing. All right, it's often referred to as complicated. Complicated is a term utilized to justify inaction or avoid responsibility. Every city, county in California is culpable for the very real housing crisis that we are in today. It's real. It may not affect you directly or your city staff directly, but it affects many of us who don't feel represented by our representatives. The workforce exists here. The lesser earning economic workforce is not simply transitional jobs, as we're referred to so often. We are single parents, we are families, and we are more than just your service industry. We deserve to live within the community we serve. We need to stop lessening the value of our workforce and stop treating the workforce as though we are not worthy of the communities we serve. This is a drop in the bucket, but it's a necessary drop in the bucket. SB9 needed to pass yesterday. It needs to be done. We didn't plan appropriately, and now this is happening. We need it. Housing is needed. We exist, but we don't have the ability to live here. I'm confident I know more about housing than most of any representative up and down the state, because it's what I do. Outside of my work and my momming, I'm treated like I'm naive, and so I buy books, copious amounts of housing podcasts. I do my homework on all the literature. And you need to hold your staff accountable to the constituents and our needs. You brought the businesses here, and now we're employed here, and we need to live within the communities. Our children don't have the luxury or the privilege to play in all your parks and your cute, beautiful, pre-planned communities because we can't afford to live in them. We're not asking for the same size home. We're not asking for the same kind of home in which your $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes can afford. You can afford them, great. Build us smaller homes. That is what this does. Beyond that, I plead with you, put land trusts on the agenda. Let's talk about attainable homeownership. Let's go beyond this measure. Let's see what we can do locally. We haven't done anything locally as far as attainable homeownership goes for the local economic workforce. We don't talk about it. We don't educate the conservative constituency within this community and how this benefits them and reduces traffic and includes your grocers, your child care providers, your barbers, your preschool teachers. It's inclusive. You value the accessibility to the business, value the employed. We're full-time. And we're drowning, and we're not here because we can't be here. I'm representing them. Please represent them with me. We need housing. I'm not making this up. I'm begging you, please. Our children are in the hospital because they're down parents and communities that we don't have the community you have. But we're serving you. We're working. Build the housing, pass SB9.
Thank you. Next speaker?
The next speaker is Bob Cal, and then I have 1 written comment.
Okay, thank you.
Please do not pass SB9. Please do not. Can you imagine, Mayor Spank, you have maybe a view of the country club where you can look down to tennis courts, and somebody builds something in the way of your view. All of your houses are endangered of having something put in their front yard just because somebody wants to live here and not have to travel a little bit to come here. I had to travel to work for an hour and a half to 2 hours every day to Huntington Beach from here because I couldn't afford to live there. I never thought of putting everybody out of their home and make them move because they don't have the property anymore to live in this area. So I actually think this is, when I just go down the communist lane, I was in Monterey Park in Alhambra, and that place is such a zoo because they pass stuff like this. Stand up against the state. Don't pass this law. I urge you, please do not pass this law. Thank you.
Next speaker.
So the next speaker, that was all the in-person speakers. I do have one written comment from Martha Howard. I am writing in opposition to an extension of the interim urgency ordinance and requesting to end the moratorium on construction of split lot housing. We need additional and affordable housing now. SB9, California Housing Act, passed a year ago. There should not be additional excuses to extend a delay in approving a city ordinance in compliance with the state mandate. The agenda enumerated 5 documents attached for item number 15. Every single one is a redundant document and a stack of legislative repetitive excuses as to why approving an ordinance needs an additional year. Let me exemplify. The February 22nd, 2022 report submitted by the Planning Commission was completely a verbatim cut and paste of SB9. The report fails to provide our community with specific information on the progress the Commission is achieving towards submitting a recommendation for the city's approval to allow us to build a second unit. Moving forward, on January 10th, 2023, and a year after SB9 passed, the Planning Commission staff submitted another recommendation to extend the moratorium urgency ordinance for an additional year, citing the need of professional consultants. Once again, the city is allowing legislative delays and waste of financial resources. The Planning Commission personnel are well acquainted with our city and potential areas for rezoning. The agency can render all the information needed for the council to approve the ordinance. So why is the commission asking for further extension? Due to these facts, it only makes sense to take a close look at this department's performance and start vetting potential employees that can produce. We can't continue waiting based on excuses. Compel the planning director to submit a proposal within 90 days. Stop extending the interim urgency ordinance number 22-23. Mr. Mayor, those are all the comments we have.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for council comments and/or a motion. Councilmember Alexander, I believe you might have a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So just a couple comments on this. First, I just want to thank you for your presentation. You've put this out to us many times as this has been going through over the last year, and it's very informative. And having sat through the meeting today, I was able to pick up on more things that are concerns for me coming from the state, not necessarily from our staff, because you guys are doing a great job. I know that there are people who need housing, but at the same time, I know that there are people who move into this city because we are not overpopulated, because I came from New York City. I came from an area that was massively overpopulated, and we moved here to raise our family because we wanted to have a little bit of space. So I want to also be able to, highlight those families that have uprooted and came here because this is what they were moving to, as far as something beautiful and just having space. The other thing that I'm looking at, a couple other things with it, is the highlights of looking at what about our waste. We already have plans throughout the city as far as how much in population how much waste can be pushed out, how much water. It's going to take a lot more for planning to be able to create, like a new system. I would look at. We looked at Old Town here, and we would have to create a whole new sewer system just to add a couple more people on the to sit outside, and that was some of the things that we looked at. So for me, that's another concern. Parking, schools. Our schools are already just overpopulated. And so now we're just going to stick more kids into these areas. And again, staff is doing a great job. This is my concerns coming from the state. We've spent millions on traffic, for the I-15. Is it just going to reclog everything up that we've just put phase 1 going into phase 2, and now we're hoping to go into phase 3? And so all these concerns are just really just in my mind, and I just want to be able to highlight. One of the things that one of the staff members brought up also is for the 3-year affidavit. I'm going to just come right back to you. Can you explain that to me one more time as far as what that looks like for me?
Yeah, so a homeowner is required to sign an affidavit that they're going to live in the property for 3 years. They can do that. It gets recorded with the deed, but then it comes back to enforcement. It's a difficult thing to enforce. So if you have a property owner who decides to move, they can sign the affidavit and they can move and rent that place.
So it means really nothing. As for right now, as far as how we can see to even try to enforce it, it's
Correct.
a piece of paper. So, and the last thing is I just want to encourage if there's any HOAs, people who are on HOA boards, if there's anybody who wants to even go to their HOA, I would very much encourage that you bring this up to the HOAs as what this looks like for SB9. If you guys have questions, please come back to myself or city staff to get an understanding of what this is going to look like and how you can get ahead of this in your own HOAs possibly. So, and that's going to go back to the CCRs, which is the conditions, covenant, and restoration. So again, if you guys have questions for HOAs, we'd love to be able to work with you on those areas as well to be able to just take a deeper look at what that looks like for your community. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stewart?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that is, this is a very well planned out community. And everything we've done in the city, we did it for a particular reason. And this is it AB9? SB9?
SB9.
SB9 is a complete polar shift on city planning. And so without us taking the time to actually figure out how we can implement this without major impacts, A, to our roads, B, to our infrastructure, it could be a time bomb just going to blow up in our face. So that's why we're pushing this out. We want more time. I'm on the WRCOG committee. So we're looking at this. We're trying to find ways to make this work. We're not trying to find ways to make it not work, but we got to find ways to make it work for our city and our citizens. So that's what I just want people to understand. We're not saying no. We're not standing up here, wanting to push back. We just want to make sure we do it right for the city of Temecula. So
That's a good point, doing it
Yeah.
right for the city of Temecula. Good points, Mayor Pro Tem. At this point, I'll certainly entertain a motion to move this item.
so moved.
I'll read the title.
Thank you.
This would be an interim urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Temecula, California, extending interim urgency ordinance number 2022-03, establishing emergency regulations pursuant to Government Code Section 65858 on urban lot splits and housing units built in accordance with Senate Bill 9, and making a determination of exemption pursuant to Government Code Section 65852.21J and California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA Guidelines, Section 15061B3.
Thank you very much. Looks like we've all voted.
And Councilmember Alexander, would you like to go ahead and vote? Is your vote screen up?
It is now.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, that is unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Matt, thank you for the presentation. Much
Thank you.
Also, Mr. Mayor,